I mean, how can you not love walruses? They are incredible animals, and in this video, you're going to learn 10 amazing facts about them that I have gathered from studying marine biology. And you're definitely going to want to stick around to the end because these facts will just continue to get more interesting the further down the list we go. So let's jump right into it. Starting off right away with fact 1, where can you find walruses? I mean, we might love these animals, but I definitely don't want to be its neighbor because the walrus lives in the freezing far north of the planet. And then there are two main subspecies of the walrus, which occupy different parts of the Arctic, the Pacific and the Atlantic. The Pacific walrus has a wide range, living in the freezing northern waters above Alaska and Russia. But the Atlantic walrus lives in the ice-covered waters of Canada and Greenland. So the Pacific walrus is way more abundant, with the population being around 200,000 individuals in the wild, and the Atlantic only sitting around 25,000. And a little fun fact, the scientific name for a walrus, which I did not look up how to pronounce before recording this video, so I'm not even going to try, but I'm going to put it right here so you guys can see. And I've never called a walrus this, but in Latin it means tooth-walking seahorse, which I've also never called a walrus. Speaking of tooth-walking seahorse, let's talk about those two big ones sticking right out of its mouth in fact 2. Both males and females have tusks, and they can be up to 90 centimeters or 35 inches long. But what do they even use them for? Well, a big one is walruses will actually use their tusks to haul themselves out of the water onto sea ice. But that's not even all, because they also use them to keep breathing holes open, defend themselves from predators, and fight with other walruses. And for fact 3, would you challenge a 1.5-ton animal? No, right? I mean, I definitely wouldn't. And there's only a couple animals in the world that would. And it seems like the only two worthy opponents that would take on these huge animals would be an orca and a polar bear. So with having such few natural predators, if they're able to escape human impacts and threats, they can live up to 40 years. And then staying on the topic of challenging one of these animals, you definitely won't want to mess with a mama walrus and her calf, because they are so protective over their young. They have even been seen grabbing their baby, holding it to her chest when they feel threatened before diving into the water to escape. This is because they relatively don't give birth very often, which is why it's so important to them that they protect their offspring. And for fact 5, we're going to discuss just how big walruses are, and even their babies. Walruses are some pretty big animals. They can weigh up to 1.5 tons, or about 3,300 pounds. And then on top of it, they can get pretty long, typically reaching up to around 7 to 12 feet in length. So what's considered a big human baby? When I tried to look it up, it seemed like anything 10 pounds or more would be considered larger than normal. But for walruses, even the babies are huge, weighing around 75 kilograms or 165 pounds at birth. But then if you think about it, if there was a 3,300 pound human, they would probably also be considered larger than normal. Anyway, for fact 6, what do walruses eat to get this big? It's pretty straightforward, a steady diet of mollusks, crustaceans, and worms. For example, they like to grab shellfish like clams and mussels off of the sea floor, and while they're down there, they might pick up a couple sea cucumbers. Sometimes they will hunt fish, and then the huge adult males, they've even been seen hunting seals. But how do they find food? Well, we're going to go over it a little bit more later in the video, but they actually have super sensitive whiskers that help them find and detect food along the sea floor. Even though they're big, they can be surprisingly fast, especially when it comes to food, because they can reach speeds of up to 22 miles per hour when chasing prey. Their big size and all the food they eat is definitely not for nothing, because in fact 7, we're going to look into the thick layer of blubber that they have to protect them from the cold. They are big, heavy animals, and like I said, it's not for no reason or lack of exercise. The thick blubber or fat that's stored beneath its skin is what helps the walrus stay insulated, keeping it warm even in the freezing temperatures of the Arctic. And because of this blubber, they're able to withstand freezing temperatures like negative 35 degrees Celsius or negative 31 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, so we're nearing the end, and if you thought those were amazing, we're about to get a little bit crazier. So like we said earlier, walruses only have 2 natural predators in the animal kingdom, orcas and polar bears. But could you guess what is the greatest predator of these animals? I'm sure it won't be a shocker. Humans happen to be the biggest threat these animals have ever faced. During the 17 and 1800s, walruses were hunted almost to extinction, since back then their meat, oil, skin, and tusks were considered to be valuable materials. But now walrus hunting is illegal for everyone except indigenous groups. And then fact 9, an interesting way that walruses hunt. So like we said earlier, walruses have those super sensitive whiskers. And they have about 400 to 700 of them on their snout that are even attached to muscles and supplied with blood and nerves. Then they'll take in mouthfuls of water while they look along the seafloor for food, and then use this water to shoot jets at the sediment, allowing them to catch burrowing animals like clams. This method is actually surprisingly efficient because they can eat anywhere from 3,000 to 6,000 clams in a single feeding. I mean, these are some amazing animals, right? Well, this next and final fact is the one that's really going to blow your mind because it had me asking Google about it after I found out. But before we get to the last one, please show this video some love, like it, share it, and push that subscribe button. Anyway, for fact 10, sometimes walruses will get carried away when looking for food and end up way too far out from land, and when they tire themselves out, they have nowhere to haul themselves onto to take their midday nap. And that's why they come with a super handy air sac on their throats that inflates like a balloon or life jacket. And then once this pouch fills with air, the walrus can then just doze off for a quick nap, because this allows them to sleep in a vertical position and kept safe from drowning. And 2 little bonus facts for the true walrus lovers that made it this far. How do walruses move when they're on land? Well, it's kind of like a walk, or I guess more of a hop than anything. Because on land, walruses will use their back flippers to get around. They use these flippers to thrust their body forward with small hops. Obviously, being so heavy, they're not getting much air. But their blubber is around 6 inches thick, which acts as a cushion when bouncing around on the ice or other hard surfaces. And then walruses are very social. A walrus colony is a very noisy place. These animals live in large groups known as herds, which gather together on land. And once these animals do get together, it's very clear that they have a lot of catching up to do, because they loudly bellow and snort at each other to communicate. But it's definitely not all fun and games, because during the mating season, these gatherings can become pretty dangerous places. Male walruses can become very aggressive as they fight for females using their tusks. Well, if you haven't gotten your facts fixed by now, definitely go check out our Just the Facts playlist. But do you see what I mean? Walruses are incredible and pretty weird animals. What do you think? Which fact was your favorite? If you really like this video, definitely subscribe to the channel because there'll be a lot more just like this one. And comment what animal you want to hear about next. And as always, if you want to learn more about marine and freshwater life, habitat, sustainability, and visit some pretty cool places along the way with us, check out our other videos. Thank you so much for watching. We appreciate the support, and together we always consider blue.